Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro friends. Today we are going to be talking about punctuality and how important it really is or it isn't in the workplace. And let's start by talking about what we mean by punctuality. So punctuality isn't just about arriving to work on time and leaving work on time. So some people tend to leave work early if they can. So punctuality is not just about that. Punctuality is also about getting tasks done in a timely manner. But primarily right now, to start the conversation off, we want to talk about people who arrive to work late and people who leave work early. So science has been looking over the last number of decades as to why people tend to come to work late. And there are a lot of reasons. Science hasn't pinned it down to one thing. And I did a lot of research on this to try and understand it. I've also been researching it for the book that I'm writing. And it seems that there are a number of reasons. Some people suggest that it has something to do with your passion that you have for work. Others suggest that, and primarily the research suggests that it is to do with multitasking, actually, which was something that I found quite strange. It wasn't something that I necessarily thought would be the number one reason that people are late to work, but it is something that's associated with something called the planning fallacy. And the planning fallacy is something that was created by Daniel Kahneman. I'll include a link to some articles in the show notes. Daniel Kahneman is a Nobel Prize winner, and he came up with the planning fallacy. And basically what the planning fallacy includes is this idea where people overestimate. They have an optimism bias about how long it will actually take them to complete a task. And this includes the task of getting yourself to work on time. People, they make assessments of their own experience that are not affected by their own experience. And what I mean by that is they don't take into account how long it has taken them in the past. They don't take into account the times where they look at the best outcome and what it should take them without taking into effect or taking into consideration what it typically takes them. So the planning fallacy is typically based around people's tendency towards multitasking and how that gets in the way of them being able to arrive somewhere and get shit done on time and within a timely manner. And that's really at the core of this whole discussion. This idea of when people tend to overdo things, too many things at one time, they tend to start being late for things. So people's tendency towards arriving late may not necessarily be a clear indication that they don't like their job, although some of the reading that I did suggests that people will tend to arrive to work late, will be less likely to arrive to work late if they are not. Let me say that again. People won't be as motivated to arrive to work on time if they are if they're not passionate about their jobs. So if someone's passionate, they want to arrive to work late. If they're early, on time. It's Monday. So if people are passionate about their jobs, they're excited about getting their jobs started on time and getting to work to get everything organized before their shift starts, they are more likely to want to get to work on time. It doesn't mean that they will. And with the introduction of social media and people sitting on social media as they're getting ready to go for work and thinking, I'll just scroll a little bit more, it won't take me that long. All of these things are contributing to the planning fallacy as it exists. How can you as an employer and how can you as an employee take into account these biases, and how can you try and stop them from happening. So how can you help someone who is going to be more likely to arrive to work late? And there are specific personality types that will be more likely to arrive to work late. So more laid back people, so type B personalities, are more likely to arrive to work late than type A personalities. And so if you're a type B person, if you're a more laid back person, be well aware that you are somebody who is more likely to arrive to work late and give into your tendency to want to do lots of different things and it'll be fine and don't worry about it, it'll all get done kind of attitude. The other thing is, in a paper that was released in 2008 in Human Performance, and again, I'll include a link in the show notes, it says that attitudes toward lateness predicts, so your attitude towards lateness predict if you're likely to be late in lenient climates. So what that says is if your employer isn't setting, or if you are an employer and you're not setting strict start times and strict finish times, so if you have a lenient environment, that if somebody is more likely to come to work late, in that kind of environment, in a lenient environment, they will more times than not come to work late. So it is in your best interest as an employer to have very strict guidelines and boundaries around your start times and your finish times. So if you need your staff to arrive to work at 6 a.m., make sure that there's a rule in place that says you need to be at work at 6 a.m. And if you don't arrive to work at 6 a.m., this many times, let's say it's a 3 strikes and you're out policy, there is going to be a consequence for that happening. So, shit happens. We all know things go wrong. We all know that there's traffic. We all know that trains run late and buses run late and people wake up late, etc., etc. But having a policy and a clear boundary around punctuality is important, because it encourages people to be punctual. That's what the science says, okay? And in my experience as a head barista, in my experience in my own life, it's been the thing that's always pushed me to get there on time. When I've worked for employers who were insistent on you arriving to work on time, you tended to take that employer more seriously. And if you loved your job, which I never worked in jobs that I didn't love. So if I loved my job and I knew I was working for somebody who was serious, I always wanted to arrive to work on time because I didn't want to lose my job. Now, I'm inherently a multitasker. I'm somebody who I've always got lots of stuff going on. So it helped me realize that if I needed to get to work on time, I had to do certain things or not do certain things in order to arrive to work on time. I am, as I've spoken about on this podcast, someone who is inherently lazy, and my life choices, that being an entrepreneur, prevent me from giving into my lazy tendencies. And so if I was to give into my lazy tendencies, I would turn up to work late because I like to, mess around on social media and take my time cooking and do all that kind of stuff. But because of punctuality and because I've trained myself against multitasking when I know I need to get somewhere on time, I'm able to avoid the trappings of the planning fallacy. Now, the other thing is when we look at this idea of getting things done. So, for example, getting all the roast, getting every roast that needs to get done for the day, making sure that all the prep is done in a cafe, making sure all the tasks that need to be done in your business for the day are done. There are a number of suggestions on how you can take care of that. So if if, again, it goes back to this multitasking thing. If you, as an employer, set a clear list of things that need to be done and achieved by that day and encourage your staff against multitasking. So, for example, if you have somebody, and full disclaimer here, when I was a barista coming up, and pretty much for my whole career, multitasking was encouraged, but it was a part of our training and our job. So what we would do there is that we were on bar, and in between, we would use every second in between things to fill up sugars, to restock cups, to fill up our coffee hoppers, all of that kind of stuff. But that was not a part of necessarily multitasking. It was a part of the job. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is the prep that needs to be done that can't be done in a couple of seconds. So leave that stuff, if you don't have a designated person assigned to it during the shift, leave that stuff to get done in downtime and have a list that needs to be done. And it is specifically done during downtime. So either during the close of your shift or during an allotted time. Let's say you know that between the hours of 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock, it's usually a slower time. Have somebody that's assigned to getting all the syrups and restocking the coffee and making any of the hot chocolate syrups that need to be made, placing orders and things like that are done at a designated time so that it's not during multitasking time, because that is the highest culprit for when things will tend to get left by the wayside. The other two other things that can help you achieve those things is to have strict agendas. So a list that is crossed off every day, whether it be during roasting, whether it be in a cafe setting, whatever it is. Make sure those lists have to be actioned by the people who they are assigned to, and make sure that people understand what they have assigned to them. And the other thing is make sure that you are organized. Help your teams get as organized as possible and make it a priority for them to be organized, and you be organized as the owner of the business. Ensure that things are placed in the most efficient place. Make sure that people aren't having to work harder than is necessary to execute tasks, and encourage your staff to want to be more organized with their time. Make it a part of their job learning. If you have any questions about this, please leave it in the comments wherever you're listening to this, or hit us up via social media. We've got posts related to punctuality, and we will, as I said before, we will have links in the show notes to help you get access to the content that we're talking about. And thanks for listening, folks. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day.